Hello, welcome back to my channel, and this is Crew at Psychology. So in this video, we're gonna look at a model answer for the question, outline and evaluate the multi-store model of memory in AQA Psychology A-level. So let's begin. First of all, we need to start with AO1. So for 16 marks, AO1 would be 6 marks and AO3 would be 10 marks. So let's see how it's structured. We need to write about the multi-store model before going into our strengths and weaknesses. So some schools do say that students can draw a diagram of the multi-store model to illustrate how it looks like in their answer. For me, actually, I think that is fair enough. You can also do that if you have time in the exam. If not, the main points to get across to get the full marks in AO1 would be the description of what the model is, like separating like the differences between sensory memory, short-term memory, long-term memory, and going into the details of their capacity, encoding, duration, and all of that, right? So let's see what it's written in here. The multi-store model of memory was proposed by Atkinson and Shiffrin. I wrote like the full name, but that's not necessary. The year 1968 is also not that necessary to include as well, but it's just like an introduction that's good to have. Actually, you can start here, to be honest. The multi-store model suggests that memory is made up of 3 separate stores: the sensory register, short-term memory, and the long-term memory. Information flows through these stores in a linear sequence. So we're setting up an introduction, which is not that necessary, but it's just good to have before going into our first sensory register or sensory memory. It's called differently, but it's the same thing. Okay, so I'm not saying this is like the best like model answer, but I'm pretty sure all the details are covered and it's sufficient enough to gain a good mark. I mean, like 16 out of 16, or in the top band 14, 15, 16. Let's see what's written in here, okay? So the sensory register is the first memory store and receives information from the environment through the senses. Each sense has its own sensory store, such as iconic memory for visual information and echoic memory for auditory information. The sensory register has a very large capacity, but a very short duration, usually lasting less than half a second for iconic memory. Most information, is forgotten unless attention is paid to. So the main point in this paragraph would be what sensory register is, and that it gains information from the environment. And then the senses, we can actually not have it, depends. The word iconic memory, and refer that to as like visual information, same echoic memory for auditory information. It's just like good to have. But the main point would be like its duration. I mean, you don't need to have like the exact numbers in here because it's just like very short. And I mean, to be fair, in different textbook with numbers for this part, it's written differently. So just saying it's very short would be okay, as long as like it's mentioned about being very short, and then it's like not up to like a second at all. So like even less than half a second, you can mention that too. And the attention part would of course be essential to talk about, because attention is something that allows information to be transferred into short-term memory. So talking about short-term memory, me scrolling down here, when attention is focused on information in the sensory register, it passes into short-term memory. We need this. Then then short-term memory is believed to have a limited capacity of approximately 7 or plus minus 2 items. This is also essential and mainly encodes acoustic information according to George Miller. See the word mainly? I don't just say like it encodes acoustic information. We want to be like more precise and say it mainly encodes this type of information rather than saying it only encodes the acoustic information. Even without the word only, like the examiner will think that the answer is mentioning like it's the only data, the only piece of information that's encoded here. So the word mainly is very important. Like one or two words that we add into a sentence, it changes the mark. So just be aware about that. Then short-term memory also has a limited duration of around 18 to 30 seconds, unless information is maintained through rehearsal. See the range around 18 to 30. So don't just say like 18 seconds or 30 seconds. It's a range. And why is that? It's the same reason for the 7 plus minus 2. It's not exactly 7. Some people have like 5, some people have like 9 items in their short-term memory capacity. So it depends. There are individual differences. So with numbers here in this section, we want to have like a range. If like you can remember that in the real exam. If not, just say around 30 or around 18. Like the word around helps to be like more, like not make it like too rigid, like it's definitely 30 or definitely 18. We want to have like a range. If not, like at least the word around helps to make it more like better, help it makes it better. Okay. Then Atkinson and Schifrin proposed that maintenance rehearsal keeps information in short-term memory and elaborative rehearsal transfers information into long-term memory. With this, some schools say it's consolidation, depends on your school. So use the word you were taught. Okay, we cover both, all capacity, duration, and coding. All of this is essential, and same, do that with long-term memory as well. So long-term memory is considered a relatively permanent store with potentially unlimited capacity and duration. It mainly encodes semantic information. Information in long-term memory can be retrieved back into short-term memory when needed. So we need like this word. And you see, like in semantic, we also have the word mainly encodes semantic information. Then according to the multi-store model, forgetting occurs due to displacement in short-term memory or decay when rehearsal does not occur. So you can see like even the types of forgetting are specific enough to be like, it's in this type, that type of memory. Decay doesn't decay happens in both short-term and long-term. So we don't need to say like short-term or long-term. It's like in both. So this is everything we need pretty much for like a full mark in AO1. I'm sure there's not like other details we need. We don't need to refer to research because the question, it says evaluate the model. If the question says like outline, evaluate, research into multi-store model, then that's gonna be a different piece of model answer. So read the question carefully. In AO3 then, we want to cover ideally two strengths and two weaknesses. We want to be balanced, but that's not like that we want to be balanced, but it's not like that needed. We don't need to like be too specific about having it 2 and 2. It can be 1 or 3 versus 1, strength weaknesses ratio, as long as it's covered like both sides. You don't just want to talk about strength alone or weaknesses alone. That's not balanced. The word balance means like cover both sides. Okay. And in this model answer, I'm being like picking up like the main strength and weaknesses so that we all know what these research are, unless like your school taught other research and you can use like those pieces of research. So one strength of the multi-store model is that there is research support for the distinction between short-term and long-term memory. Glanzer and Kunitz conducted research using the serial position effect. Participants were asked to recall words from a list and tended to remember words from the beginning of the list. Sorry, just let me plug my earphone a second. All right, now then, it seems like it's raining so that you can all hear my voice clearly. All right, so I'll mention primacy effect, and at the end of the list, recency effect. I'm pretty sure most schools, or like all schools, teach Glanzer and Kunitz. Maybe not the names of these two researchers, but like the serial position effect, which refers to like people remembering like most information at the beginning and at the end of the word list? And why does that support the multi-store model then? For strength of models, theories, explanations, we usually like need research support for that. And what else was I gonna say? Okay, the reason for why like zero position effect can be a strength for multi-store model, that's because like you see here, we wanna explain like the primacy effect was explained by rehearsal, transferring information into long-term memory. So the idea of whatever that links back to AO1 in the answer, as in like for multi-store model, AO1 says that rehearsal is needed to transfer information from short-term to long-term, right? As long as it refers back to that and supports the concept of multi-store model, that the model is right. So that's going to be a strength. While the recency effect occurred because the last few words remained in a limited duration of short-term memory. So let's see how this makes sense or not make sense. Like the words at the beginning of the list, why does that use long-term memory? It's because we read through like, we don't read things from like the end back to the beginning. We start with the beginning all the way to the end, right? So we see the beginning of the word list more frequently than those at the end of the word list. So that's why we rehearse them more frequently as well. And that's why it's moved into long-term memory and we remember them better than those like in the middle of the word list. And the reason for the words at the end of the word list, why we remember them better than those in the middle, it's because they are at the end. So they still remain in the short-term memory that has like a limited duration. See here, don't mention like 18 to 30 seconds. We don't need that in AO3. We need that in AO1 and have the units like seconds as well. Okay, this is the reason for like why it's a strength here. Then that's not enough. We need to explain even more. We haven't even said that it supported the model just yet. So have it somewhere in at the end of this paragraph here. The occurrence of both primacy and recency effects supports existence of separate short-term and long-term memory. So the main assumption of multi-store model is that the stores are separate from each other. We need to mention that. We need to say like having both like effects at the same time. I mean, in the same study, it supports the model to show that short-term and long-term are separate stores. They're not like connected together. This increases the validity of multi-store model because experimental evidence supports the idea of distinct memory systems. I mean, you can just like not say that a model is valid. I mean, validity is a methodological issues, and we learned that methodological issues, ethical issues, are used to evaluate research, right? But the idea of validity here in the last sentence means that the model is right. So ideally, you can just say it supports the model. But then what about the model? That the evidence supports the idea that the memory systems are distinct, that they're different from each other. They don't work together. Okay. If you are confused about this, I mean, I tend to explain, like, take long time to explain. If you're confused about this, please ask in the comments. If not, then look at the next strength. A further strength of the multi-stop model is support from neuropsychological evidence. So as I said, strength are mainly research support because that's like saying that the model is right, a theory is correct. So apart from Glanzer and Kunitz, we want to use other pieces of evidence. And I use HM because most schools teach this. The case study of HM involved surgery to treat severe epilepsy, during which parts of his hippocampus were removed. We want to be a bit detailed, but in terms of evaluation, not outlining the research, right? But we need some bits of the research that sounds like AO1, but it's AO3 here. Following the operation, HM was unable to form new long-term memories despite having a largely intact short-term memory. We're saying this to show that short-term, long-term memory are separate memory stores. In the next sentence, it said, this suggests that short-term and long-term memory are separate memory stores. We need this sentence. We need to explain this as proposed by multi-store model. So some students say like, we already mentioned in the previous paragraph, that short-term, long-term memory, they're separate. So why do we need to mention this again in the next strength? I mean, it's a different strength. It's a different evaluation piece of evidence. So we always need to explain that, even though it's already mentioned earlier in the strength beforehand, right? After that, therefore, it's the link now. Therefore, evidence from HM provides empirical support for one of the model's central assumptions, increasing the validity of the explanation. So see here, we focus mainly on how HM had one type of memory store damage and the other one still being intact. Some students would say, so would KF case study or would like other pieces of case study provide like empirical support for the model? I would say, look carefully at the model. I mean, I don't have a diagram of the model now because it's a model answer, right? But the diagram starts with sensory memory on the left, short-term memory in the middle, and long-term memory on the right. Think of that in your head now, and like you can only use evidence that says like a person in the case study had damaged long-term memory, but normal or intact short-term memory. And why is that? Going back to AO1, it's a linear model. The model goes through a linear sequence. So if we use KF case study, I mean, most schools teach that as well, but I mean, that's not a strength, right? Because KF has damaged short-term memory. And by having damaged short-term memory is in the middle of the model. And as it's a linear sequence, the examiner will be like, then if short-term memory is damaged, what information goes into the long-term memory? So it's impossible. We can't have like KFK study as a strength because you know it's linear. Think of it as a straight line. But why long-term memory damage could be a strength? Why? Because long-term memory is at the far right of like the model. Even though it's damaged, we don't have anything from long-term memory going into like the next memory on the right of it. There's nothing in the right side of on the right side of long-term memory. So yeah, we can only use HM case study or Clive Waring case study or others that are similar. Therefore, did I read this? I think I did, yeah. Increasing the validity of the explanation. So the model is correct. It supports the central assumptions of the model. Then for weakness, I picked the ones that are most commonly taught here. So however, one limitation is that the multi-store model is considered oversimplified because it assumes short-term and long-term memory are unitary stores. Research suggests that both short-term and long-term memory consists of multiple components rather than single stores. So gladly, like it's AQA and it's A-level. Right, so in GCSE, in some exam boards, we don't learn working memory, but because we learn it here, we can definitely use this weakness to say like the model is reductionist. I mean, I didn't use that word here, but like it's oversimplified. That's the same idea. To say that actually there's many types of short-term, there's many types of long-term memory. There's not just like a single unitary store of short-term and for long-term. For example, we need to include example. So any P paragraphs that don't have evidence, I mean, we can think of examples, give examples, use the phrase for example. I mean, that's fine. I mean, we don't always need evidence. It's not like we are taught evidence in every single topic, and that would be too much to memorize as well, right? So for example, Endo Tuving or Tuving, just the last name is fine, proposed different types of long-term memory, including episodic, semantic, and procedural memory, each with different functions. Similarly, research into working memory by Alan Badley and Graham Hitch suggests short-term memory, which is working memory, contains several components, including the phonological loop, visual-spatial sketchpad, and central executive. This weakens the multi-store model because the model fails to accurately represent the complexity of human behavior. I mean, that's like enough for a full mark in this paragraph because we're saying that there's actually like many types of short-term, many types of long-term, and we refer to like the names of those. We don't need A or one of these types of memory. We don't need to say what the different functions of long-term memory are. That would be for a question like outline and evaluate the types of long-term memory, not for this question specifically. We just need to have them mentioned in the sentence. And I mean like for working memory as well. I mean, because it's both short-term and long-term memory that consists of many components and not just like one alone, not just short-term or long-term memory itself. Okay, then finally, because I'm saying like the best ideal version would be like two strengths, two weaknesses, but not always necessary. It depends on the topic. It depends on what you can think of in the exam time. So the other one would be about rehearsal, because like the model assumes this too, that like rehearsal helps transfers information into long-term memory from short-term memory, but this is not always the case. So we're saying here, like another weakness is that the multi-store model places too much emphasis on rehearsal as the main process for transferring information into long-term memory. So saying this as a weakness means that it's not true. Evidence shows that long-term memories can form without prolonged rehearsal. For example, people often remember emotionally significant events or meaningful information without repetition, such as their university graduation. So you say I use the word evidence without like mentioning any names of researchers. Can we actually do that? Or can we actually like write something like this? I mean, some students mean like makeup studies. Can we do that, Kruat? I mean, like, yeah, why not? I mean, since like as long as we don't have like random, like think of random names of researchers, that's fine. We're not inventing studies with like real names of researchers. We're saying a supporting study shows that, evidence shows that, something shows that. That's fine. I mean, in the real world of research, out there in the literature, there's like highly likely to be research like this, right? I mean, it sounds logical. As long as you make up research that sounds logical, that makes sense, that's fine. Just don't make up research like in space or, you know, underwater or somewhere that like or something, some procedure that's like it's impossible to happen. I mean, there are like millions of research in on Earth, like in our planet. So just like, you know, use research that sounds like realistic and have examples, have it clearly explained. It's makes sense, it's logical for most people actually to like not have to rehearse something, but actually remember that very well. As long as it's like very meaningful or it's something like their hobby they really enjoy and they can remember that well, or something a person really fancies, really like, maybe a video game, a movie, or something special, their birthday or something. Additionally, Craig and Watkins, I mean, if you haven't studied this, if your school doesn't teach this, then just don't use it. Just use something that you're taught. I'm just like using this in here in this model answer. They found that the amount of rehearsal does not always lead to better long-term recall. Okay, this is a different piece of research, and I mean, it like the same point, you know, so that's why I have it in here. Okay, I mean, like if you have research, just like have something explained clearly. But this is the same point, so it doesn't matter that much. So I explain this suggests that the quality or meaning of processing may be more important than maintenance rehearsal. This is the idea that shows how like the model is incorrect. Therefore, the multi-store model may provide an incomplete explanation of how long-term memories are formed. Right? Clear? Are there any questions? If there are any questions, just leave your question in the comment and I'll come back to answer them in my free time. But something like this, as long as your AO3 is clear, it's well explained, there are like clear structure in terms of like having points. This is point, this is evidence, these are explanation, explain part, and have like a link sentence at the end, or some link after the comma from the previous from what was previously mentioned. That's fine. Same here. Same here. I mean, if not evidence, have examples. Sometimes you explain things along with your example. That's fine. And same for this one with examples. All right. So Hope to see you again in the next video, and I hope this video has helped you. Good luck with your revision. Bye.